Welcome to the poetry. Welcome to the Fete of Brains, a place where player poets meet to share their minds and hearts. Today is a special program where we always talk about uh, peace and poetry. Peace and poetry, poets speak of poets under the segment of We Are the World and We Are the People. It's a monthly program which tries to bring world poets together, closer, to talk of other legendary poets from their, the place or country or anywhere else. What of
You're
subject?
muted,
Go
brother,
on.
if you want to speak to us.
Sorry? Yeah. Uh, Richard?
Okay, I hear
Yeah.
you now. I'm sorry. I had the sound level
So
down.
our purpose is
My
of course, it happens. Our purpose is to bring the world closer and erase all borders through this literature. And uh, each poet is, as you all know, would be given 15 minutes to present their respective poet. And we have with us Dr. Rupali Sarkarkar, who is a professor Sri Venkateswara College, Delhi University, will be moderating along with me. And as you all know, and in the last episode, we got to know about Robert Eo, who talked about the soy avocado. Jane Austen was there, spoken out by Katie Joe Blake, and Asmin S. Brown talked about Audrey Lorde. In this episode, Richard would be talking about Rachel Carson, Ian Mckenzie would be talking about Greta Thunberg. Leslie Constable was supposed to join, but she couldn't make it due to ill health, and so Franchesa has taken her place. And thanks to Franchesa for accepting and to talk about Frida Kahlo. And also she was supposed to join Elvin Killa Soleta, who was supposed to talk about Emily Dickinson, but she couldn't able to join for some reasons. But then yes, somehow this program should go on. So, anyways, then let us begin the program by invoking or calling upon Dr. Rupali Sarkar to say a few words about this program and to introduce Richard to go with. And Richard, and let me remind each participant that you are given 15 minutes to talk about your poet, respective poet, or whatever it is. So, over to Dr. Rupali Sarkar, who will who carry forward this show.
Good evening, dear poets, your friends. And this is a very special program because this way Prasanna and I, sitting in one part of India, we get in touch with our poets all over the world. And for us, it is, and for our viewers who are either watching it now or they'll do it later on, the recording. It's a learning thing. It's a very major learning forum for us where we get introduced to poets that we may have cursorily read, sometimes heard, never heard before. And it's been so energizing for us to do that. And today, this evening, we have uh, some very important poets that we'll be talking about. And what I found very interesting was that they're all women poets, and it's the month of where we talk about women. And anyway, women are there in your lives in all forms, especially starting with your moms. The other is that many of them that when we say they are poets, they're also scientists, they're artists, they're mystics, and you're going to be telling us about these wonderful people. and how the work that they do as scientists or as climate change people, young people speaking up, how their language, how their words, they are not poets. They're poetic. Their work is so poetic. There is poetry in the ocean, for example. We hear the poetry. There's the ocean itself is poetry. Or being concerned about the creatures, the crabs, the fish, the trees. Even Emily Dickinson. We're not going to hear about her today, but a large number of her poems were on flowers. She wrote about flowers. Even when she sent her poems to people, she sent a little posy of flowers with it. So we have the environment very much with us today, and very important. I'll begin with, of course, Prasanna is doing a great job. Prasanna, I must thank you for creating this forum, for giving so much of your time and energy to it. It's a commitment. Today is Poetry Day, but poetry is not just, reciting something. It's a commitment. It's a commitment to get across to the world what we feel very strongly. I begin with Richard, and Richard is a very familiar figure because he participates in our open mic program on Sunday. So I know, what a very interesting poet he is and the kind of work he's doing. But I'll read out his bio. Richard Spisak Jr. began his work as a performance light artist in Mel Tanner's Lumonics. Richard has written and produced a live sci-fi radio comedy series on WLRN FM in Miami. Richard has seen 6 of his plays mounted and has published 2 short story collections and 3 volumes of poetry. Richard also produces the webcast Poets of the East, which is available on YouTube. I hope you one day invite me to this, Richard. And we look forward to hearing you today. And thank you so much for being here. And you'll be speaking on a poet who is a scientist also. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Gopali Saur. I am honored to be here with you. I have, as you say, enjoyed working with you and Prasanna in those wonderful Fertile Brains project. It is such a community of poets from across the globe, and everyone is made to feel welcome. You get to hear not just poetry in English, but poetry in a lot of different languages, sometimes even song and prayer. It's a marvelous, marvelous event, and I can't thank Prasanna Kumar enough for the generosity that he shows to all of these poets. Now, for today's program, Women's History Month or Women's History Day, women, in my opinion, only out of jealousy are not understood at their worth. I think, in my opinion, the power, the creative power of women is so overwhelming, so unquestioning, that I think that's partly why so many men seem somehow to undervalue this beautiful part of humanity. And I have to say, I had the good fortune to be raised by strong women, and these many women today and yesterday, they didn't need anything special. They were powerful beings of themselves, and I think you're one of those. Now, I'm going to talk about a wonderful poet, artist, scientist, writer, a woman by the name of Rachel Carson. And she is one of those women scientists who many people fail to appreciate how much she has contributed to modern society today. Now, we tend to think, and as you mentioned yourself just a few minutes ago, many people today understand that the world is not made up of individual things or individual animals or individual plants, but we live in an environment that must be cared for, that must be appreciated, and that without that care and without that appreciation, We lose animals, we lose human beings. The world becomes less capable of sustaining the life that we all find around us. Okay, Rachel Carson. She studied in college zoology. And I think that's really the seed of how she came to this, I'm going to call it a global perspective of life on Earth. She came to understand, and it's largely from her work, that we understand the word ecology. No one spoke of ecology before Rachel Carson started to talk about the web of life, first in the sea and then all around us. Because before that, the thinking was man against nature, man conquering nature. And that is, let's just say, an ineffective, inefficient, and dangerous way to think about the world, and a dangerous way to think about how human beings interact with the world. It's far better understood that we are part of a web of life. What we breathe in, what we breathe out, what we eat, what we release into the world, these are all critical facts. And to fail to understand that our lives have an impact on nature is to fail to understand our place in nature. So she was, out of college, hired to write radio programs to familiarize the public with the parks, with the natural world. That was her first job. And this ended up developing in her a voice that spoke to what she referred to again and again as the web of life. So let me talk to you a little bit about it. I'm going to share screen and show you some slides of some of the information that this woman made available to everyone. And in fact, she, I think, can be said to really be the mother of ecology. So here's some facts about Rachel Carson. Born in 1907, lived till 1964. She's remembered today as the woman who challenged the notion that humans are masters of nature, that we're in charge, that we're the top of the food chain and everybody better get out of the way. She pointed out the fact that some of, I'm going to say, the cavalier idea that man has to conquer nature is a real misunderstanding. And she was one of the first people to raise the dangers of chemical pesticides. You know, I don't know if you, well, you may remember back that far, but in the 50s and 60s, you know, mankind had accomplished so much after World War II, where whether it be in medicine or in agriculture, there was really a revolution in chemistry and an evolution in how we use chemicals to interact. And DDT and other pesticides and herbicides were viewed as miracle drugs, miracle chemicals that could be used to enhance human life. They would be made available to make more crops available. People would be fed. But what they failed to think about and what they failed to think through was the downside, the chemical impact of these strange, unnatural chemicals and what they might persist in the food chain. You know, when they would put out herbicides or they'd put out pesticides to kill pests, they failed to understand, well, birds eat insects. Other creatures eat birds. There is this interaction, there is this necessity that one species lives on another species. You poison one environment, you're impacting more than just that one pest you're trying to get rid of. And that was really, it was such a profound new way of thinking. You can imagine that many of the chemical and industrial corporate authorities, corporate powers, financial powers, had a lot of resistance. And here was a woman in the late 1950s, early 1960s, challenging the world of science chemical supremacy. And that made some very powerful enemies for her. Okay, so let me continue. She was a student of nature, a born ecologist before the word even existed, and she grew up in an area of Pennsylvania that was at the edge of a major industrial powerhouse. The city of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, was home to ironworks and steelworks and chemical factories and ultimately nuclear factories as well. And I happened to grow up in Pittsburgh in the 1950s and early 60s. And I could tell you that if you looked at, there's three powerful rivers that flow right through the city of Pittsburgh, and you would see colors that didn't exist in nature. The waters would be white and green and blue and yellow, nothing natural, and there were no plants or animals that could even survive in that chemical stew. Okay, so she became a marine scientist and she worked for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in Washington as a writer and editor. Her first book was called Under the Sea Wind. Now, right there, just that one title says sea wind. Well, we don't think of wind in the sea. We think, if we think of it, we think of the waves, we think of the fish, maybe we think of the sea floor, but we don't think about how all of those animals, all of those creatures, all of those plants all interact. So here she was after World War II studying these new developments, this new understanding of the ocean. Her second book, The Sea Around Us, was a biography of the sea. It became an international bestseller, and it raised the consciousness of a generation. Because after Rachel Carson, her work on the web of life in the sea, the web of life at the sea and the shore, the word ecology, basically a whole new science of that interactive web of life. She focused on ecosystems on the eastern coast of the United States from Maine to Florida, all kinds of different climates, all kinds of different environments, but it really addressed this interaction. And I think after Rachel Carson, we could no longer say man against nature, man over nature, because what she helped us understand was that human beings at their best are part of nature, not against it. Okay. Now, the revelation of ecology. In her books on the sea, Rachel wrote about the discoveries of submarine technology, underwater research, how islands are formed, currents merge, temperature, how it affects sea life, how erosion impacts not just the shoreline, but the creatures within the sea. Now, this was in the 1950s and early 60s, and the world was suddenly opening up. The scientific understanding was completely transformed. And like I said, there were powerful forces that would prefer to think of the miracles of chemistry, the miracles of pesticides, the miracles of herbicides as a one-way street where only good happened. And she really made people aware that there was something else going on. And she realized, especially since she was not just a scientist, but she was involved in informing the public. So she did a lot of thinking about how she could help people understand. So she brought up information about the widespread misuse of organic chemical pesticides by the government and industry. When I grew up, I remember when the trucks would travel through the city spraying for mosquitoes, children used to play in the spray coming off those trucks, literally breathing in the pesticide that was being sprayed in the communities. And after Rachel Carson brought this to the attention of the public, that changed. She was a social revolutionary as well as a scientist. She was a poet. In her book Silent Spring, she asked very tough questions: whether and why humans had a right to control nature. Did humans get the chance to decide who lives and dies, to poison or destroy non-human life? By showing that all biological systems were dynamic and interwoven, she asked the public the question: who gets to decide what part of nature is expendable? Uh, she graduated from Pennsylvania College for Women, but then studied further at the Woods Hole Marine Biological Laboratory, still a very powerful research facility. And then she got her master's at Johns Hopkins University. Hired by the Bureau of Fisheries, she wrote radio scripts, and she began a career that took her to the very forefront of science in that day. Several articles that she wrote had such a profound impact. Help Your Child to Wonder, The Ever-Changing Shore, many books of hers, literally in the 50s and early 60s, were absolutely changing the way people understood human life on the planet. And I'll be wrapping up now. She was concerned about pesticides. Her book Silent Spring really brought that to the public's attention. I can speak personally. My own family had copies of her book, The Silent Spring. We became aware. And back then, this was the early 60s, you had to hunt to try to find organic food. Now, many grocery stores around the globe will have a section set aside for organic foods that are not pesticide impacted. And I think that's a wonderful thing. She was testified before Congress in 1963. She asked for policies that will protect not just humans, but the environment as well. And I want to conclude by saying Rachel Carson, this scientist and poet, left us so much to think about and really changed the way that we think about the environment and our relationship with it. So thank you so much. Thank you, Prasanna. Thank you, Ms. Sinkar. Thank you both so very much. And I hope we learned a little bit something about Rachel Carson and her contribution. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. It was really remarkable personality that we got to hear about, and Rachel is something so dynamic and so much to take away from her life. Rupali ma'am.
Thank you so much, Richard. Prasanna, with your permission, I'm going to ask Richard, because we do have, one poet less on our list. Could, Richard, I do want you to read a few lines from what she wrote, because we want to get a feel of what she had to say about the ocean, what she had to say about the Silent Spring, which brought about such a revolution and changed, policies, government policies.
This is a bit of a poem of hers from her book Silent Spring. She says, "One never knows. Keep believing. Bushels, please stop this. We need the light to be sought. Match, come to the candle unless the moths become fraught. Pure enlightenment's easy, walking out of darkness. Meditations upon meditations engage with our prowess. Letting love in, the allowance, saying it, I love you. It is the giving that is how we accrue. Speculation for accumulation. Please don't run on empty. Here, let me help you become cosnieti." That idea of sharing some wisdom and making all our lives better is so much what she brought and taught. And I think we have her to thank for the word ecology. It was an amazing transformation, and science can never be the same.
And on Poetry Day, a poet transforming our thinking, bringing back changes in government policy, bringing new words and terminologies and making us aware. That is the job of the poet. That is what we have to be conscious about. And we can talk about just, our lost love, some beloved who we lost some years ago. I think this is what the call of the day is. And what is very interesting is that, in our, in India, in the Indian cultural system, if I don't want to say it's a Hindu, it's not a religion, it's a philosophy, a way we look at life. We have what is called the Dasha Avatar. The Dashavatars, the 10 incarnations. And the first incarnation is Matsya. Matsya is the fish. And then comes the Kurma. Kurma is the tortoise. So, the sea, from the sea comes life. And that is exactly what Rachel was trying to was putting across, that life begins in the depth of the sea. And as an oceanologist and as a poet, I think she's one of the greatest American poets that we can come across. Thank you so much, Richard. There is so much more to read, and you have guided us into it, and you have at least stirred my mind tremendously today. Thank you so much.
Indeed, ma'am. Poet should be conscious of what speaks and what he, gives out to the society. Thank you, Richard, for giving out a little bit about Rachel. Such a dynamic personality, as ma'am said. Please welcome Franchesa, who will be talking about Frida Kahlo. And thank you, Franchesa, such a sweet gesture of your words and, coming in and talking about Frida Kahlo. Few lines about Franchesa Kirkpatrick. Franchesa is a Nashville, Tennessee native world traveler. She has been a writer and a storyteller from a young age. Franchesa has had poems published in the Library of Poetry, Vanderbilt, Ingram, Cancer Center, anthologies, and online magazines such as Medium and Views Hound. She reads at Poetry in Brew, Literature Cave, Global, and Poetry Zones around the world. And of course, Fetter Brands. Thank you, Francisca. Thank you. We would love to hear from you. Get to know about Frida Kahlo. Thank you, Francisca.
Thank you, Kumar. I'm so glad to be able to present this to you because of the knowledge that I have about her throughout my life. A little special facts are that my initials are her initials, and also that I keep a picture of her on my cell phone because one of my favorite restaurants has a picture of her. She loved animals. She loved many things, but I'll talk a little bit about her birth because she was very interesting and I can identify with her because I have some disabilities. And when she was born, she was born with spinal bifida, and that caused her to be sort of like paralyzed at a young age. And then when she became 6 years old, she contracted polio, which made it even worse for her. But she kept continuing on as an artist and a person who was a writer. And she went on to work one day, and all of a sudden, she was in this streetcar, and it turned out that the streetcar was wrecked into, and she was in an accident that involved her pelvis and her body, and she barely survived that. And to go on, she just kept having thing after thing happen. She became in love with an artist called Diego Rivera, and in that, she really showered people with her love through her art and kindness that she could put out. Many people wondered why. Okay, she had also had sort of like a different lifestyle because she was also bisexual and she could like men or women artists, which in that they said that she might have even um, talked with Georgia O'Keeffe and some other women artists along, had love in her life with them. Anyway, so there's a lot of things that people probably never realize about people until you actually get to know them. And I have a friend that actually knew Frida Kahlo. He's still alive today. His name is Manuel, and he lives near Nashville, and he makes clothing. So he talks about Frida with a loving heart. He says she was very loving. She was from his city, Mexico City area, and she was just a light when she walked around, and you can see that in her paintings. I mean, I know that she lived a lot in the darkness and lived a lot in her bed, which I have to do sometimes in her room, and she wasn't able to get out and do the things that everybody could do, so she had more time to think about what kind of art that she wanted to display, what kind of person she wanted to be, and compose things. I know the paintings that she made were very based on what things that she was involved in her daily life. She wanted to be a good wife. She wanted to be a mother. But unfortunately, because of these accidents, she could not be a mother. And that caused her also to go into painting about that. And she shows many different paintings and talks about that in her poetry, is that she lost the chance to be a mother, even though doctors told her could happen. They got her excited. They wanted to make her uh, happy about that. And it turned out that her body just wasn't able to carry a child or keep the child to term. She also had many different love affairs because of being there by herself when her husband was out doing projects. And also, she found out that her husband was involved with her sister, Christina, who she had to forgive later on in life. They both made up, but it was kind of sad because she put all of her faith in, Diego. He was a lot older than her, and he had taken her, and her father wasn't very happy about this, but she was very happy because she wanted to be with Diego. Diego, he was her everything. Um, there was so many things that happened during her time, like women's movements and things like that, that she almost considered herself as kind of level with men because she wanted to do everything that they could do, or she wanted to be involved in anything that was impactful. With her paintings, she gave so much life to the world and gave us many things that we probably never would have thought that we could discuss today if we look into her paintings and go into galleries that she has put her paintings in. We can see that she was such a light. Like I said again, she put all of her daily life into her work. Even when she wasn't able to be well, even when she wasn't able to go, she was, like I said, such a light and a muse to Diego Rivera. He loved her so very dearly, and he kept giving her, even though they both had their challenges, he gave her that love. He gave her a reason to live and to do her art. Uh, she, it says that she saw uh, Leo Trotsky. Kahlo had a brief but passionate affair with the revolutionary leader, and she had to talk about that. On maybe closer to her death, she had to talk about some of these things because these things were coming to light, and she had to go to court. Even though she died at 47, she had such, like I said, a beautiful life with all of these people that you can look up later on if you like on Google it, if you're very interested in people that she touched and was with. She said also in her days, she said things like prolific things, like, I may have a disability, but that does not stop me from creating my pieces. And like I was talking earlier about her sister, Christina, and she was sort of like also helpful to her in some ways, but not helpful in the way that she was after her husband. But it also gave light to this painting that she did with Diego on her forehead, because she was thinking of him and telling, it was like Diego on my forehead. So that was one thing that she was just very creative in that way, is like she could put her body in different positions too. Like some of her paintings you can look up and she's sitting beside herself, and she's got all these little things sticking out of her body, and she's also showing herself when she had these injuries which caused her miscarriage. You can see in some of her paintings, she'll show this child inside of her womb, unable to survive, but yet she puts this child in a picture so that we can see this child today. And we can also see the many pregnancies she had, but the one that she really, really took a heart of was the last one that she had, because they had given her, like I said, they'd given her hope that she was going to be, a mom, and she could not do that. So in each and every turn, she had injuries. She had to lay in bed and paint. And eventually they took her leg because her leg was turning gangrene, and she had had so many problems with her health that this leg had to be amputated, and people had to help her. People had to give her the attention that she needed. And I do believe, because she was very uh, a kind person and very artistic, that people did fall in love with her. And she also fell in love with them, and she fell in love with different things, animals and things like that. She came to know that love was one thing that she could not live without. and and her first love was uh, on Alejandro Arias, and that was her first boyfriend, and she painted him, and it was in a Renaissance style. When she painted his picture, she had thought about many things in her life that just didn't go quite right, like I said. So that gave her the impetus to make these paintings. And she continued to make her paintings. And in that, the doctors were giving her all this pain medicine. So she became addicted to pain medicine. And her pain medicine gave her kind of a very bad way of living, because she still had to be able to get up every day and do her art, but it kind of dulled the senses when she would do her art and things like that. So she had to probably be on again, off again, say, of this pain addiction, because even though she had many people helping her and working around her to keep her safe and try to keep her with uh, everything that she needed, she still struggled because she couldn't just keep people around her all the time. And it is kind of hard to do when you are an artist. You can't be that kind of artist. So I'm going to go into some other things that she did, because she had a very loving family, and everything that she was that love. And I know we all want to feel that kind of love, and have the love in our life that she had. she ended up in her bedroom, pretty much dying of bronchial pneumonia, um, in 1954. And so her husband, Diego, started uh, like a trust for her so that her art and everything could live on. He knew that was important because he also was an artist, and they had to get all the things together once she passed away. And there was also some things that he had to say about her. She was sort of, again, a light in his life, somebody who took care of him when he was getting older and things like that. So she gave him a lot of her life too. But there was one thing that she did say that kind of strikes me, was that she just didn't want to live again. Like we were talking and different things, she would say, I just, I endured such a horrible, threatening things in my life that why do I need to come back? She probably was aware that she could, and she says that that's what her wish was as she was dying, was that she did not return. And that was kind of odd when I was reading about that, because I was thinking, we all are a part of love and we all love to return. So anyway, her famous Casa Azul, which is called the Blue House, has been turned into a museum. And he said, I did this for the love of my life. And so that's what exists now. And there are many poems and things like that. So I will have to go ahead and look up a poem for you, because I thought of a poem that I really thought about. She she had a great love, like I said, for life. And this poem kind of gives me the thing. And I know I'm over the limit, but that's my alarm going off telling me that I'm speaking 15 minutes, that I was going to go back in and look at that poem, and I've got to turn this one off. But thank you so much, Prasanna. And if it's okay for me to try to read this poem, because it was very important there at the end. It's called You Deserve a Lover. And I think this would be a great ending to what I'm going to say about Frida Kahlo, because she really was looking for that lover in life. And this was one of her writings. You deserve a lover who wants you, um, disbelieved with everything, all of the reasons that you wake up in a haste and demons that you don't let sleep. You deserve a lover who makes you feel safe and who can consume this world with whole if he walks hand in hand with you, someone who believes that his embraces are perfect match to yours with your skin. You deserve a lover who wants to dance with you and who goes to paradise every time he looks into your eyes. Yes, and never gets tired of studying your expressions. You deserve a lover who listens when you sing, who supports you when you feel shame, who respects you with your freedom, who flies with you and isn't afraid to fail. You deserve a lover who takes away the lies and brings you hope, coffee, and poetry. So thank you, Prashana. Sorry I ran a little tiny bit over, but I needed to talk about that poem because that was the one. That was the one that gave me the chill, the real thing about her, like above all else, her paintings, but that poem is one. So thank you, Prashana.
Thank
Franchesa
you.
Kirkpatrick.
Thank you. Thank you, Franchesa. Such a personality who has suffered a lot that, she came out with her work that resonate, even that influenced many. Rupari ma'am.
Thank you so much, dear poet. You know, you moved me to tears hearing Frida Kahlo's story. Although you knew something about it, but you've told us so much more. To suffer physically so much, and yet to be able to do all the things that you want to do. To be what you want to be. That's such a miraculous, such a remarkable life. It's a remarkable life because what is it when we talk? When we now talk about anybody, we say so and so is a lesbian or somebody something. What on earth is this all about? Love is love. It doesn't matter what you cross across. You get love from you know from anywhere. And she was that seemed to move her. What moved her life was love. And the poem that you just read, that it really tells you, it really, encapsulates all that she was. And I can't understand, what kind of human beings or creatures we are that we can suffer physically so much and yet be ourselves. You and I would think, oh, you should have a husband, a wife, some kids, a house, a car. No, that's not life. Life is all about living it because it's your life and you live it the way you want to. And today in 2025, on this day, we are talking about a woman who could hardly walk, who had so much of disability because of her accident. But she's one of the greatest writers and poets and artists. And, we celebrate her today. We celebrate her today. Thank you so much. I can only hold back my tears. Hold back my tears. Thank you so much.
Same. I mean, she gives me great emotion when I think about the life that she gave us, that she gave us her art. I mean, not only that, but she lives on in her art. Yes.
Exactly. Thank you, Francis. Really, very touching, but yet remarkable and powerful woman she has. She is was. She never displayed her disability, but then it came up with her poetry. Our next panel member will be talking about Greta Thunberg. Ian Mckenzie. Ma'am, would you introduce? Yes.
Okay, welcome, Anne. Andrew Mckenzie, born in 1950. You're such a young man. He's a poet from Barrow in Furness, Cumbria, northwest England. He has had his poetry published in several anthologies to date, including Descent, an anthology to end war and capitalism, edited by Mark Lipman for Vagabond Books, and in Ain't No Deadbeats Around Here, edited by Finn Hall, published by Like a Blot from the Blue. He has also recently been nominated for the Pushcart Prize for Poetry for his poem Piet Mondrian, View of Beach Life, included in Ain't No Deadbeats Around Here. So thank you so much for being here with us today. And you're going to speak about a young woman who made such a great impact, who has made such a great impact, and another ecologist, another fighter, another revolutionary. Thank you.
Yep. And I also should mention that I do have a poem on the moon as well that was sent out as part of an anthology.
Yes, yes.
Their claim to fame, possibly. I'm just going to say thank you, first of all, to Prasanna and you, Rupali, curating the Fertile Brains blog. I've been aware of you for some time now, largely through Richard's posts on Facebook, but also I think through David Leo Sirowa as well, who has been part of it. And so I felt quite privileged and honored when Richard messaged me to invite me to do something to take part in this. Richard, although we've never met and we're so far apart, I feel so close to Richard. It's like brother to brother.
Mutual, brother, mutual.
Absolutely. And so I thought, wow, and I mean, I said, well, something to do with the environment. I think I got my wires slightly crossed because I thought, when you said environment, my first thing, oh, who do I know about the environment? Greta Thunberg. That's on everyone's tip of everyone's tongue. And so I thought, oh, I got to write a poem about Greta Thunberg, which I thought that's the form of my main response. But I have to say, just before I get into that, because of that, I realized I needed to do some research and find out. And I realized how little I actually knew about her, other than what I'd read or seen or heard about her through the media, through television. She, as such a young person, she's only in her early 20s now, has had such an enormous impact on people's awareness. And you think, well, where's that all come from? So I'll just preface when before I start reading the poem, some things that I found out. First of all, oops. Uh, first of all, is her age. She's so young. She started, I think, becoming aware about environmental issues when she was 8. I think she has said, and then she became uh, active when she was only in her early teens. So it's 8, so she's young, she's female, a girl, and also about she's on the spectrum of autism, which is often has, and I'll bring that up later, has been used against her. But first of all, I also found out something I didn't know about her parents. Her father is an actor. Her mother is an opera singer, or was a professional opera singer. But when she was, I think, just into her teens and becoming very strongly aware about the environmental issues, she asked her parents, requested that for her that they give up flying in order to help the environment. Now that meant for her mother, her career as an opera singer was very much curtailed. And yet, when people brought that up and said, "Oh, you sacrificed your career for your daughter," my mother's response, and I thought this is really beautiful, she said, "I didn't sacrifice my career. I saved my daughter's life." And that struck me as such a thing. Well, that's really parental love. That her mother said, "I didn't do that because she insisted. I did it through her free choice." So her impact. There are very few people, I think, who are unaware of who Greta Thunberg is. We've all seen her. She's appeared, made speeches. She's addressed the United Nations. She's addressed various other public bodies. I'm not sure if she's addressed in Parliament, but she has visited UK and addressed people in various situations. And yet, you think, what has she overcome to, I think, that courage, but also overcoming what to me, what many people would think of as some kind of disability, being autistic, which, excuse me, I do bring out in the poem. But she's always, regardless of the attack, the kind of playing the man or the girl attacks on her, she has yet never lost focus of her message. And I just going to mention now the reactionary responses, the deflections, trying to brush her off, which are focused on A, her youth, B, her being female, a girl, and also her autism, which I feel for those people who, like, say Donald Trump talking about drill, baby, drill, kind of weakens their argument because if you had a substantial argument or response to that, you would have something more to say than just saying, "Oh, she's a girl, she's autistic, I know who, whatever." The very thin arguments. Um, and I feel that this was something that I wouldn't have looked at if not for being invited by Richard to take part in this. So I really must express my appreciation for deflecting me or directing me into an area to explore more. And I think, as I said earlier, I think, what better way to respond than in a poem, which I tend to find that, over the past 5, 6, 7 years, is probably my most meaningful medium in which to express my feelings, my thoughts, and to try and get my ideas across. So I'm going to share screen, if I may, and here is, oh, hopefully here we are. So, and I've have used some of her expressions. So she talks about our house is on fire. And this is the title of my poem. Our house is on fire. Greta Thunberg, climate activist. No more blah, blah, blah. It's time to reclaim the future before time runs out. What's left of it still to run. So, skipping school at 15, this girl parked herself on the Reichstag steps one Friday in Stockholm in May. An autistic teenager, not normally prone to loquaciousness, found she had plenty to say on climate change. She came to show the world the way, a modern-day Jeanne d'Arc, not hearing voices, but following her heart. Voted Person of the Year in 2019, she came to show us through her actions, ended up on the cover of Time magazine. Those harsh words, how dare you, rang ominously, the clock about to strike with the final hours almost upon us now. Those pleading hands inching towards the witching hour of bleakest midnight, with no second chance to rectify oversight. And over this benighted future landscape, fate dangles its Damoclean blade. The house is on fire, and we see the flames even as we speak, licking at the high window. Our willful ignorance has caused paralysis, curtailing any chance of escape. And so a young girl, just in her teens, with an elven face of innocence, hair in plaits, comes to us offering salvation. Her demeanor awash with a brash fearlessness, she sits in dire protest with blunt warning for any who might deign to lend a willing ear to listen. It's the climate, stupid. No false alarm. There are no second chances to avail. No dodging out of harm's way. We are in this all together. Your privileged upbringing, your well-wrought charms, polished and patented on the altars of your paid-for pristine public school education. It will not spare you from this dragon pit of superheated despair that is about to engulf all and sundry. A fate without exception we all inhabit. Remember that it is not in our writ to choose the messenger who brings word to deliver bad news. Global warming is happening whether you choose to heed the warning bell that is ringing in your ear. This is an existential crisis that threatens without curtsy or fear of rank or display of wealth. The rich, the poor, the wise, the fool alike, all will be buried beneath the ashes of want and hubris. Meanwhile, the Titanic still sails at dawn, and there will be no extraterrestrial life raft to take you away on some fantasy-driven rescue mission with all your ill-gotten wealth. Your digitally sourced Bitcoin empire will not serve as your reserve commission. Nobody's riding in on a white charger to save you in your golden trumped-up tower. So indeed, how dare you? The words ring out, their stern admonition of dire alarms. You grey old men who heed not the warning will be washed away on the incoming tide, a tsunami of irreversible climate change with no place to run or hide. Your riches, piled upon the funeral pyres of your selfish greed, will burn and perish as you sink amongst the common swell of rank humanity, victims all that refuse to heed the prescient call to arms from soft-spoken lips of some slip of a girl. So I think that's about as I can say. I don't think I could put it any more succinctly or more potently than those words. So thank you very much for letting me speak, and thank you, Richard, for inviting me to participate.
So nice of you, Ayan, and that at the notice of Richard, you have come and you have talked about the much uh, to the current times. Greta, how dare you?
Yeah.
The slogan that resonated the world across the issue and being an artistic personality, is a child. Uh, more, Rupali ma'am, please.
Thank you so much for this wonderful presentation about a young girl, who's being defined by her disabilities rather than her abilities. That's a very interesting thing that we people do all the time. And your poem that you have written about her sums up her whole life and all she's been. Her speeches are poetry itself. She's a poet because she looks into the life of things. She's seen the way Rachel Carson looks at the world. You see, Greta doing the same thing. And we see Frida also doing the same thing. And it's very interesting that this evening has been one of poets, women poets. As Richard said, that, perhaps men are envious of women because of their strength and their power. I'm not too sure about that, but there is something that makes it difficult for perhaps men to accept women in a particular mode. But I would just like to, put in my just read a little thing that, her presentation, Greta's presentation at the United Nations, where, the language is so poetic. She said, somebody so young saying, "You have stolen my dreams. You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words, and yet I'm one of the lucky ones. People are suffering, people are dying, entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you?" I think we must all use this on Poetry Day. How dare you? Truly. And we have brought together. I'm sure you people didn't even talk to each other about it, but very interestingly, that all our poets today have been women who are revolutionary, who have who have crossed the boundary of physical. We when we look at women, we look at the body of a woman. The woman's body becomes more important to the extent that we women have internalized it. And we have here women who are suffering from various, medical problems. I won't say disabilities, but medical problems. And yet being able to produce and do things that what we would say is people who don't have those problems are unable to do. And I think that Prasanna, you and I, when we started this program, had a particular vision. And I think this evening that vision has been fulfilled because of our dear poets who are here, who've been so kind to spend your time and tell us about these poets. I'm very inspired. I'm extremely inspired. And thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, man. It's truly inspiring, and thank you, Richard, for taking your points and inviting Ian, Franchesa, Leslie, and
Yes.
many others. And it's such a nice gesture of yours, taking points. Not an easy thing to get done, but yes, exactly. we are fulfilling our what do you call the aim that we program is conceived for, and Pali ma'am was the idea behind the the backbone of this structure, the program, or what even the entire my recitals, what are the programs that coming before you.
Well,
Uh,
thank you both,
thank
and
you,
thank
thank
these
you.
wonderful contributing poets.
I will look
Everyone
forward
brought
to
something.
next month. We'll have me look see who has what for to talk about the present. Okay, see you until next time. Thank you.
Good night and thank you
Happy
so much. God bless you all.
World
All
Poetry
right.
Day.
Thank you. Thank
Thank you
you.
for having this program. Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
Thank you.
and
everyone. Doctor.